This week on your Old School RuneScape update, what do Untrimmed Slayer, Sailing, and Project Rebalance all have in common? Well, they're a common thread with our guest, Sk8r Dan Man from Clan Quest, who shares his Old School RuneScape adventures. We also look at the While Guthix Sleeps rewards. This is the Old School RuneScape update, episode 29, recorded Saturday, May 25th, 2024. When the hand is not a hand. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Old School RuneScape updates. Sirion and myself are here as we are each and every week. How you doing?
Good.
Right on. And joining us also this week to add a little bit of variety to the panel and just to showcase one of the folks we interact with on the daily to our podcast community, we have a wonderful gentleman by the name of Sk8r Dan Man, or just Dan here from Clan Quest. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, I'm really glad to be here. Appreciate you guys inviting me on.
Yeah, you are a long-term member of Clan Quest, one of the very early folks who founded the Old School RuneScape Guild. And, you know, I always ask folks when they come on the show, what is your biggest claim to fame? So, you know, we're just going to, in effect, throw the wheel over to you right now here and say, if you had to highlight one defining character of your, or one defining feature of your Old School RuneScape character, what would you say that is?
Sure. So, like you mentioned, I've been with Clan Quest since basically the beginning of Old School. And so as far as Clan Quest goes, I would say I have that reputation. You know, I think I'm currently the clan owner. I've got the gold key. But in terms of my personal accomplishments on my main character, it's got to be my Untrimmed Slayer cape. That's my biggest flex. It only took me about 10 years to get it, so...
What made you go for an Untrimmed Slayer cape?
So for whatever reason, back before EOC and RS2, I decided, I guess didn't have any 99s. I found out that was a really cool one to get. And so I did it. In fact, I was like 97 Slayer when EOC came out.
Oh, no.
I was really mad. Yeah. Eventually Legacy Combat came out and I went back and I did the last couple levels and I got my Untrimmed Slayer. So that's in a keepsake box now. So I've got it. But then when Old School came out, I'm like, this is going to be so much bigger, such a big accomplishment in Old School because you don't have like all the free XP like penguins and stuff like you do in RS3 or even back in RS2 before EOC and like Squeal Wheel and Treasure Hunter or whatever it's called these days, and all that stuff came out. You still had a lot of different ways to get free XP from various things, and so being able to do that on Old School, where your best bet is lamps from random events and achievement diaries, there's not a lot of ways to get that free XP. So
yeah, I was just sitting there in amazement when you mentioned that, and of course, you know, when I learned that about you, because for me, Slayer is the bane of my existence on all things RuneScape. I am dreading that push to 69 or whatever it is for. Yeah.
It is definitely one of the rarer untrimmed to see in the game. Like I play on 2K Total Worlds, and it's rare that I'll see someone else, and oftentimes I'll be on there and other people there will be like, oh my god, an Untrimmed Slayer cape. So
okay,
it's like I see more Zuck helms than I see Untrimmed Slayer capes.
What is the duck helmet?
A Zuck, no, not duck helmet, Zuck.
Oh, okay.
Zuck helm. So
okay, we'll chalk that up to the microphone.
Okay, yeah. For people who don't know, the Zuck helm is the highest tier reward for completing all of the combat achievements in the game, which basically requires mastery of every boss in the game on a near Wooks level. Like it is.
Oh my god,
it is not easy.
That includes like Inferno and like.
Yeah, not only Inferno, but also doing like completing Inferno in special ways and doing like specific mechanical challenges and time trial challenges, and it's insane. But I see plenty of those on 2K Worlds. You'd be surprised how many people
and, you know,
stand at the GE wearing those, flexing them.
Right,
So,
I was gonna say that probably feels like the bigger flex than the Slayer to those people, but you know,
I mean, it is higher prestige, I would say, but it is not as rare.
right, and you know, you in effect have what I would call a unique account build around that, because you get other 99s, you have to drop the cape and then telegrab to pick it up to maintain that. So I don't know how many other 99s you have, but it's something you've had to have done multiple times.
Yeah, I have like 5 or 6. My most recent one I got was Magic. In fact, when I did leagues, I did the same thing. I got Untrimmed Slayer first, and then I got every other 99, and I did the drop trick. And I found that the one that was the hardest to do was the construction cape, because when you're in construction mode and building mode in your house, you can't drop stuff. So I had to drop it outside of my house, go in there, use the boost, do the thing, get the 99, and then leave and telegraph it before it despawned.
Wow.
So it was like a whole process, but I managed to pull it off. So,
and hey, I mean that shows your dedication to the cause if you're going to do that even on a temporary game mode like leagues.
Oh yeah, and like part of the reason I like to do it on those is just to sort of make sure that I know what I'm doing. It's like a way to testing grounds, you know?
Oh, nice. Okay.
I would be like, if I were in that position, I would be so anxious continuously about my hit points level.
Right.
Because I feel that's one that would just sneak up on me.
Well, see, that's exactly the point. So, in case anyone is not any listeners are not aware, whenever you deal combat damage, you get hit points XP equal to 1 1/3 of the damage you dealt. So, if I deal 3 damage, I get 4 hit points XP. And the Slayer XP that you get is based on the max HP of the monster you kill. So generally, you're getting 33% more hit points XP than Slayer XP if you train naturally. So this is why all those lamps and free XP come in really important, because I need to get over 25% of my Slayer XP without getting any hit points XP.
Cannons, I guess.
Yes, that is the big one for most people trying to do this is cannoning. But then you have to watch out for your range level.
Gotcha. Oh,
fortunately, the cannon only gives half XP.
Yeah.
So
that means so you're going to get more Slayer in the end then.
Yeah, you still end up getting more, as long as you're not cannoning over half your tasks. You know, you've got to cannon at least, well, if you're doing it purely with cannoning, then you got to cannon at least like a quarter of your tasks. But I also use various other tricks, not counting those lamps. I would use like recoils and poison and venom. Those are much lower impact strategies, but I feel like every little bit adds up.
Yeah.
I would even, in the Kourend catacombs, where there are metallic dragons where it's multi-combat, whenever I would get a steel dragon task, I would go there with venom and I would tag both of them and then just stand there with the poison, with the fire immunity up from the potions.
Oh, that's neat.
And just take hits while they just die to the venom, and I would just be sitting there fletching, waiting for them to die.
Amazing.
That's a good way of going about it. Would you ever, like Jagex you mentioned the keepsake keys, would you ever just like to have them add that cosmetic safekeep for you in this case, just for like something like this?
In general, I would say no, not for every item, but for capes specifically, I would really like that. Not just because of my account, but I feel like for most accounts, like most of your flexes are going to be on the cape slot.
Yeah.
And I would really love to be able to like go doing Slayer with my Slayer cape, but fire cape, fire cape's way better. So why would I do that? I put it on whenever I want to get a duplicate task, because that's like the bonus of the Slayer cape.
Yeah. And I also say the same thing for the head slot too, with the party hat and whatnot, because
there are some head slots that are, I mean, right?
The party hat is not a flex in old school.
No,
Shane.
but it is for those of us. It is for those of us who like the legacy styles of them.
And it looks cool.
It does.
Like, it has a reputation. Whether obviously it's not a flex, they're worth like, I don't know, less than 100K each.
Right,
but they're cool. I wear it all the time on my free-to-play Iron Man that I play on rare occasion.
There you go. And
I like to wear them.
And
they look cool.
And June 6th is coming up if you want to role play as Duriel 321.
Yeah, there you go.
So, but
around that time of year, green party hats always spike.
So, you have Untrimmed Slayer. What's next for your account, or what are you currently chasing?
Oh man. So after I hit Untrimmed Slayer, so this was about last year. So Old School came out in 2013.
Yeah.
It was Christmas of 2022 that I got it. I got it
1.5 years ago.
I admire the dedication on that.
It was a few months shy. Well, to be fair, there were other people who got it in less time, like I could have, but I was doing other things on my account.
Yeah,
I wasn't just Slayer. But yeah, it was a matter of juggling and balancing and making sure you can't do certain things. Like once I got it, I'm just like, okay, now I can just do any bossing that I want. I don't need to be on a Slayer task, whatever. So that's one of the things that I'd made as my goal as I started working toward. I'm like, hey, Zuckhelm, right? So I started doing all this combat achievement stuff that I hadn't really been doing. And but of course, then there end up being combat achievements that are like wilderness bosses. And it's like, well, no, if I get a wilderness Slayer task, this would be cool. So then I'm still doing Slayer anyway. I guess it's just fall back to some of my old practices. But I got to do some raids lately. I recently had a friend was doing some duo Tombs of a Basket with me, and then also started learning Cox with me. Between him and I, we both learned how to do it. In fact, I think it was our 10th completion. We got the Ancestral Robe Top, which was like 180 mil. So that was a 90 mil between 90 mil for each of us. So that was really good. But since then, I've done like another 40 solos, and I've not gotten anything except a couple prayer scrolls. But someday I'll get that TiVo.
What's your favorite boss encounter in Old School?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm almost tempted to go with like a quest boss.
That's fine.
Because even though like those aren't generally repeatable bosses, they sort of have a story to them, and there's certainly some that are challenging for people.
You just said a very interesting word on that, because I know there's always going to be a huge existential debate about whether or not quest bosses should be challenging with that. And, you know, since you're talking about quest bosses, which one would you choose? And do you want more quest bosses, I guess?
Well, I've been saying for a while, I would like to see Nomad's Requiem, just because I want to see if I can take on Nomad, given everything I know now compared to back in the day.
How many tries did it take you back in the day?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, but it was a lot. But I think everyone is so much better at PDM now. I feel like, even though he was like iconic as one of the hardest bosses in the game at the time, I feel like now people would just walk over him. There's like DT2 bosses and stuff are insane. There was one of the DT2 bosses, the Whisperer, took me several tries, even just doing the quest variant. I have not gone back to any of the DT2 bosses after the quest, except for the Duke, but that was only during leagues.
Right.
So, well, I did do Leviathan as well, but I kind of cheesed that.
Okay. How do you feel then, you know, with that? Because you mentioned that, you know, you were on that track for 99 Untrimmed Slayer a few months before EOC came out. How do you feel about the present state of Old School combat and a little thing called Project Rebalance that is rumored to be on the way in the next few days or so?
So I mean, absolutely. So I mean, honestly, for me, some of the content updates and stuff, the work that Jagex does for Old School, the stuff that excites me the most is like these rebalances and these stuff that sort of try to fix the existing game and improve it, rather than just like adding more content for content's sake. Which there's not a ton of that. It's certainly not nearly as much as RS3 sees, but there's sometimes when it just feels like, well, why are we adding this? There's other content we should just be maybe focusing on that exists in the game. And so the Project Rebalance is a lot like that. They're taking a bunch of existing stuff, some nice items that people want to be good, but then turned out to not be very good, or maybe some items end up being too good, and doing various things to try and rebalance them and give everything a piece. Oh yeah, Occult Necklace is up there. I was also saying, has that gotten its changes yet? I don't remember. I think it has. But
that's a good question. I don't know if that's shipping. It's interesting you say it. Like, I had never really thought about it, but I couldn't agree more with you. Like, the biggest thing I think that I have experienced since switching back to old school back in like, I don't know, like 1.5, 2 years ago is the fact that like a lot of the content feels like there's a lot of nostalgia still in old school, but I think like a lot of the jank and like the bad stuff has been sort of fixed and improved, and like everything just feels more mature.
It's good game design. It is good game design.
Instead of just pumping more and more stuff on top of it, and they've released some really good updates, but I also feel that like it's almost as if the entire game got an entire layer of polish over it compared to what it was like back in 2007. Right. And it makes it so much more playable.
Mm-hmm. Like you were saying, they've added some great content. Like I was not super excited about Varlamore, but I played it and I really enjoyed it. And there's still, I haven't done hardly any of Coliseum. I went in there for the music track and that was it. So that I could wear my music cape again. I got a trimmed music cape as well, by the way. So
yeah, I mean, I've been loving all of the lore that old school has been doing. That's not an RS3. Like, I think they really nailed some of the current lore and the storylines there.
I think it's nice.
Ed and company really know what they're doing. With all that.
Yeah, like I have a lot of faith and trust in the Jagex team, even if they sometimes release stuff I'm not crazy about. But I think they're good designers, they're good developers. They have their hearts in the right place, and they try. Whether I like the update or not, I think they go about it in the right way. Although there's still some things here and there that I wish they would address. Like, so as you were saying, there's a lot of old content that's been polished and made better and made to fit the game better. But there's one particular that I always go back to, and it's Barrows. Barrows is a piece of content which is iconic. It's been out since old school came out, but like Torags is useless. Varax has become useless ever since they rebalance the wilderness bosses, and there's lots of tweaks they could do to fix the Barrows equipment to give it all its own niche, and it's just been by the wayside.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about that, when you say Barrows equipment in particular, you're talking level 70-ish gear. And level 70-ish gear is still moderately high level. It hasn't been power crept to the point, we're dealing with tier 90s and tier 95s and whatnot. Whereas, in old school here, we have the 80s still being some of the highest you can get. So Barrows gear isn't, by and weight useless or anything on the level sense. Like you said, it's just kind of been left by the wayside a bit. And I think the Project Rebalance changes did that sort of, nip tuck kind of procedure on the skills.
Like the project.
I mean, the Project Rebalance changes did RMs dirty, I think. Right? I think like RMs is like.
I think RMs gets better with this.
Oh.
Does it? I don't know. I'm not up to date on the latest stats.
So here's something to consider. The RMs set has a special. Are you familiar with the Amulet of the Damned?
No, actually.
The Amulet of the Damned is an amulet that you can get as a reward from Shades of Morton minigame.
Boy.
And when you wear this with any complete Barrows set, it provides an additional effect on top of the effect that the set normally get. And they're all kind of niche effects. Like the Kirill's set is pretty cool. It gives you a chance to proc a second hit for like certain percentage extra damage. I don't know exactly the numbers, but it turns out
according to the wiki.
It makes the set pretty good. The Untrimmed set effect is pretty cool. It gives it a chance to deal like 50% more damage or something like. It's something where it balances out to where this would increase the average damage with the Untrimmed set by about 7.5%. But the problem is the occult necklace is a tyrant among magic gear, and it means that you can never do this. But now you can.
So the Amulet of the Damned for arms allows it to autocast Ancients, also grants a 25% chance of combat spells dealing 30% more damage.
Right.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting combination I hadn't considered. Because because you take occults, it's no longer a must-have. You open up that slot for other things like this. Oh, that's interesting. That's cool. Yeah. Because that's it, right?
Thing...
Like I wear Arims and even Guffins, to be honest, like without the weapon, because I really just want the defensive stats because it's cheap.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that it does have these niche effects now, so that's good.
Yeah. So the unfortunate thing is the Amulet of the Damned has this effect that holds it back from ever being good, which is that it is always lost on death. So it's not useful anywhere where death is a risk. I tried playing around with it a bunch during leagues, and I went through a bunch of them, and it sucked. So that's another thing. They should fix that. But you're right, absolutely. Barrow's gear is known for being high defensive stats, and it's great for that purpose, like you said, Guthins or toe rags. Like, people think of toe rags, I think highest defense bonuses in the game, but there's not a single piece of toe rags armor that is not matched by another set's armor. Like,
look, the Torag set effect for Amulet of the Damned. Defense level invisibly increases by 1% for every 1 hit point missing.
It's an interesting effect. If only the hammers weren't so bad that if the hammers were usable, you know.
I wish they made that. Well, that poll didn't pass, right? To make the hammers the same as the new weapons from the Perilous Moons.
I don't remember. I thought that they did. They hit twice, but it doesn't change anything because of the way that it actually works. It doesn't change anything for the DPS or anything. What they should do is either increase the hammers to a 4-tick weapon. This would still make them worse than every other tier 70 crush weapon, but they would maybe have a home and be usable in that. Let's use Amulet of the Damned and try and do a tanky build, tanky low life build or something like that. I really like this idea too, is change the set effect bonus from whatever the useless thing is now, where like drains run energy or something, to has a 25% chance to hit twice, like full damage twice. Then that would have the same effect of increasing the DPS by 25%. It's just not reliable. Maybe now it has some PvP applications because it can do a bunch of damage in a spike. I think that would be another cool way to try and fix that.
I'm intrigued by this amulet. I had no idea this existed.
If only it wasn't always lost on death.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're 34K on the exchange. If you're not an Iron Man,
that's true.
That's no big deal.
Right. But when you're an Iron Man, when I used it on leagues, it was a pain because I had to get a bunch more.
And you mentioned, the Shades of Morton minigame. I don't know anybody who likes that.
And if you're doing it has gotten a polish as well. But if you're doing any sort of, I don't know, probably raids, I've not tested it in raids, but I imagine if you're doing raids and you're going at a boss multiple times, maybe you die halfway through. Well, sorry, you don't get your amulet for the rest of the run.
Right. Okay. So
it just seems like
it's more leaning into that horizontal kind of, balancing that we've seen with Project Rebalance and the choices that are available. And, that's a good thing. And to get back to it, that's the general kind of polish pass I think we have here with that. And, how do you feel now, Sirion, about arms? Because you mentioned you felt
it's much better. Yeah.
Okay.
Much better.
I'm glad I could sway your opinion or give you a different perspective to think about it, at least.
Yeah. I probably still want an upgrade from arms to something else, but I think
you
everything
will
else
eventually.
I think everything else above it is very expensive. So
isn't a Rims also getting a +1% on each piece?
Yeah. Yeah, but that's gonna take that's being like that's to compensate for my occult necklace. So
well, I mean that was the point, right? They put the occult necklace somewhere where it's no longer a tyrant, and it's necessary for every mage build, and then they shift those bonuses to other existing mage gear. And even Augury and Mystic Might like now have bonuses to magic
that's
damage.
good.
So,
that's good. I need to get my prayer up and unlock that.
My
so
favorite
now
thing
using prayers actually increases your damage. It's not just like, well, I hope this helps me hit more often.
Yeah,
it's actually
that's
helps
good
in a more impactful way.
My favorite thing when it comes to balancing like this is to say that if you have a hand that is closed, or a hand that is always closed, is it still a hand?
What?
If you have a hand that is closed, is it still a hand?
Is
That's
this
very
a metaphor?
philosophical of
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you're relating that to the topic at hand.
Basically, when it comes to balancing, if something like the occult necklace is always in your next slot, does that next slot become a next slot?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Right. Well, because like we discussed, this now opens up the Amulet of Damned as a viable option for Rims, and it means that maybe now you actually want to use the staff and the full set. The staff and the hood you probably never use when you're wearing a Rims because there's just better options for those particular slots.
Yeah.
But when there's a set bonus that kind of incentivizes you to have the full set, well, now it's worth considering.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily a bad build out the gate on that. So, unless
there's a chance you die at all.
Yeah. What about the skilling side of Project Rebalance in Slayer, mining, agility, and whatnot? How do you feel about that?
So, I mean, I love all the skilling changes as well. I agree with a lot of their perspectives that, like, I think they discussed how mining needs to be looked at more thoroughly, but here's some stuff to help it in the meantime. And honestly, I've been going to the mining guild trying to get my own expert mining gloves and stuff a little bit. And even on 2K Worlds, like, there's a lot of people actually at the mining guild, and there haven't been people there for years. So that's pretty cool.
I did notice that when I was going for 70. I didn't know if that was a new thing or not.
The mining gloves?
No, the people at the mining guild.
Yeah, like that people weren't there, or people are. Yeah. There's people there now. At least last I checked, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, a lot of the skilling update, I'm for them. I will say that the agility, when they had the agility thing and they were like talking about different shortcuts and stuff and what the different ways that they could try and improve it, I basically went through every agility shortcut in the game and I thought, okay, is this even useful? Like, what is something they could do to fix this? Is this, like, what are different ways that they could rebalance all this stuff? And any of them, then there was maybe a page long list of ones that I thought could be looked at, and they maybe addressed like less than half of them, which is kind of disappointing.
So what would you say the biggest one is that you thought of that wasn't touched by this?
That's a good question. One thing that does come to mind, I don't know if it's necessarily the biggest one, but it is one that I thought about a fair bit, is in Slayer Tower, there's those two shortcuts. There's the chain that's near the entrance that takes you up to the second floor. And then there's a chain from the second floor to the third floor, but it's all the way in the northeast corner. But the one in the northeast corner has a higher level requirement, but is useless because the lower level one it's the other way around. But the one that's further away is useless because if you use the closer one, it also gets you closer to the stairs to get you to the third floor. So if you're going to the third floor, you're only using the first one. And even if you're trying to get to things on the third floor that are not up those stairs, that are on the other side, it's still about the same. It doesn't really save you hardly any time from using the first one and running up. So I proposed switching the level requirements for those, as I recall, and then also adding another one in the northwest corner that would make it so that that northeast chain is actually useful. It's hard to explain it exactly, it was kind of convoluted, but it was this weird case where this shortcut's useless because of this one, and the level requirements on them don't really make sense given what they actually do. So I don't know. Lots of little things like that.
All right.
There's also in the Fremennik Slayer dungeon, they changed the requirement on that first shortcut to get to the Pyrephanes, which is a good idea. But the problem with that shortcut is still that you have to click it twice. You click it once to get in there, and then another time to get out.
Huh.
And it's kind of awkward. Like, surely they could reduce this to a single one click. And I don't know for sure, but I suspect that there might be a situation where you can use like a summer pie or something to go across it. But then if it drops before you get out, you're stuck.
That is... Oh my goodness.
I don't know if that's possible, but I'm sure it is possible in the Brimhaven Slayer dungeon, which they also reduced the requirement on that shortcut as well.
Oh, that would be so funny having an account
you boost to jump across, and then, well, this is why they added the home teleport way back in the day, is because people would get stuck places like this.
Yeah, exactly. Same with like when updates come out and have landscape changes. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to have to call the JMod in to fix that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I have a funny story, actually. So when I was playing back, there was a point where they opened RuneScape Classic. And so I went, and I was playing RuneScape Classic, and I'm like, I want to get the Legends Cape, because that was basically the equivalent to the Quest Cape in Classic. So I was doing all the quests, and while I was doing the Legends quest, I needed a Soul Rune for the quest, and the only place I could get a Soul Rune was in the Mage's Tower in Yanil. So but I didn't have the level. I had like 90, or not 90, of course not 90. I had 63 magic, I think, and you need 66 to get in. So I'm like, that's fine. I can buy a Wizard Mind Bomb. So I go to Falador, I get the Wizard Mind Bomb, I make my way to Yanil. Fortunately, I bought 2, anticipating that I might accidentally misclick one and drink it, and then I have to go back and get another one. So I go, and I drink the Wizard Mind Bomb, and I get in there, and I'd never been in there before, because I didn't have the level requirement. So I buy my Soul Rune, and I explore, I'm looking around and stuff. I'm like, wow, this is a cool place. And then I go to leave, and I can't use the door, because my magic level is no longer 66.
That is amazing. Does Classic have the portals on the top floor that take you to the Wizard Tower?
I believe it does, so I could have used that. And I think that they also added, because I think people have run into this issue, I think if you use the stairs to go down below where the skeletons are, there's another staircase that leads up, but it is a one-way exit.
Oh, okay.
So you can get out. I think they added that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it was there in Classic. And at the time, I was just paranoid. I'm like, there's like maybe a dozen people play on this server, and I'm going to have to go on the forums and be like, someone please bring me a Mind Bomb. I'm stuck in the Wizard's Tower. I can't get out. But fortunately, I had a second one, and I drank it, and I got out of there as quickly as possible, because I was afraid that I was going to be trapped there forever.
Right, because if you drink up and you just happen to be at the wrong time, you could lose that because it ticks down.
Right. Exactly. It could have ticked down immediately if my timing was wrong. So,
and we look at this, and it's very clear from this that you've been around RuneScape for a long time. You have that experience with Classic, and you've seen a lot throughout your time. So how do you feel? Is it time to add a new skill to Old School?
Oh man, that's a good question.
And is it sailing?
I'm not anti-new skill, but I think that the new skill has to be right, and I think that a good new skill would be a skill that improves the existing game. In the same way I've been talking about how content for content's sake does not interest me as much as balancing tweaks and content that fixes the existing game or improves the existing game or adds a niche or does something that makes the game we already enjoy better in some way, even can accentuate the classic elements of the game that maybe we don't explore as much. And I don't think sailing does that. I think sailing feels a lot like content for content's sake. It just feels like an ocean expansion. Whereas personally, I am on team shamanism because I think shamanism could, if done right, and I realize shamanism could also be developed in a way where it doesn't achieve these goals that I would like it to. But if done right, it could be set up in a way that it pulls people towards some of the older, less valued content. So hypothetically, for example, we talked a little bit about how mining, at least traditional mining methods, are more or less dead content. These mining gloves are helping with that. And mining gloves have been in a while, but reducing the cost of them and the barrier to entry helps with that. But for the most part, when people train mining, they just want to do like their motherlode mine, their shooting stars, whatever.
The lean
other
back
thing.
Kind of training methods.
Yeah. The thing that doesn't require their constant attention. But if hypothetically you could only get the certain materials for training shamanism from traditional mining, then that would be a way to reinvigorate that aspect of the game. So in theory, they could set it up in a way so it did that. And you could do the same thing for other aspects of the game here and there. But when I look at sailing, I feel like one of the problems, I mean, there's various things I could nitpick about, and there's a lot of people out there with different opinions about sailing. But what was I gonna say?
Sailing skill and whether or not it's, for content's sake.
Right. So there's they've talked about integrating it into the rest of the game by adding like new locations to skill on islands and stuff like that. Or maybe there's but that just feels like if you're doing that, that's not improving the existing game. That's not that is, if anything, that's detracting people from the existing game because it's giving them a new place to train.
And it's putting
in order for those new places to be worth using at all, they have to be at least in some way better than the existing stuff. And so it's kind of making the dead content more dead, rather than what I think should be the other way is reinvigorating that stuff.
I'll take more ammonite crab training spots though. No, I hear you. I mean, I think there is a way of doing. Like, I think they could integrate some skills like construction, for example.
Thinking.
But like, I also fail to see. The fact that you say it's basically an ocean expansion, I think, is the best summary of the skill I've heard so far. So.
Yeah, and for me, I wasn't intrigued about sailing at all, and the only thing that recently intrigued me about it is that it could potentially be a way of getting some exploration elements into the game. But then I realized, they could, do this on land if they wanted to do something exploration related.
Right. So a couple thoughts that come to mind with that. So I want to come back to the exploration point because this is another big point that I think is worth talking about when we're talking about a new skill. But you were mentioning about how I said this is an ocean expansion. We mentioned before about how Varlamore is this new content, which in some ways it is just a lot more content. But one of the things that I loved about Varlamore that I think it did really well is they added the Hunter Guild. But what the Hunter Guild didn't do is like try and reinvent Hunter. It didn't make a whole new training method. It basically said, hey, here's all the existing Hunter that you've not been playing with. We're going to incentivize you to play with it.
Yeah.
Right? And and it breathed life into what for me was basically a dead skill. All but useless. And there's still room for improvement, like the hides that you get are useless, but they did that really well. But I don't really see sailing doing that. You're I don't know. But Varlamore is an example of that done well.
Varlamore moved like Hunter and Thieving, and it will also move Herblore forward in a way that doesn't completely invalidate
right. It supports the existing content. It doesn't try to replace it or
Exactly. It feeds back into it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. And so
I think that resonates with me, why sailing it doesn't seem that interesting to me. It's just it's new, right? It's a new game. That's why I think a lot of people say it's not old school, because like it's not almost. It's Sea of Thieves old school style, right?
Yeah. Another big thing with sailing that I've seen a lot of people talk about it, and that is another one of my big gripes, is that throughout the existing game, there's a lot of content gated behind this is on a place that you can't get to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Things like Mostly Harmless or Ape Atoll or any of these islands that are locked behind quests and stuff. With sailing, you can just sail to them. Now, sure, you might not be able to dock on them, but it still feels kind of weird to me to think you can sail to this island, especially like things that lore-wise are supposed to be like uncharted, unknown lands.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you can just sail to them now? Seems weird. Like, you're you even supposed to know about Ape Atoll before you do the quest? Well, now you don't need to do the quest. You can go there. You can see apes there, you know? Same thing with, you could sail to the Western Lands in Seaport Tyrus before you even know elves exist.
And see, this is the problem, is that all of these things, they're compounding upon each other, for me at least, and I'd be interested to know if you've had a similar trajectory with sailing. The more they talked about it, the less interested you've become on it, because that's how I'm feeling presently with this. And this podcast is even seeking to do that, which maybe isn't a good thing. But do you feel like it's kind of compounding and you're becoming less interested in it? Or
I want to be open to it, and as I mentioned before, I know that mod Elena and mod what's his name? The other guy, the JMods who are working on this, I know they're really good designers.
Yes.
And I know that they are going about this process of making a new skill in all of the right ways. But I am really not convinced that this is the skill that RuneScape needs.
I mean, I think for me, the critical phase, like I just put the milestone picture up from the Winter Summit, right? Like right now we're working on navigation and primary gameplay, and then we're going to get customization and crew, and then combat and integration. And I think that integration is going to be the critical part for this skill.
Sure. But, I mean, like I mentioned, it really depends on how they try to quote-unquote integrate it, because if it kind of just says, we are going to let you use fishing while at sea, okay, what does that do for the existing fishing skill in the broader game? You know,
could there be a new meta fishing spot, I guess, is the thing with that.
Right. And does it change? Is it going to have a niche, or is it going to be like the sort of thing that everyone wants to do? Or even if it isn't like dramatically better, is it something people are just going to want to do because they also are training their sailing at the same time, you know?
Yeah. Hey,
that's why people like to do Slayer when they're doing combat, because they're double dipping on their XP. They're training multiple things at once.
Maybe I'll get underwater farming or something to that effect. Though we already have some underwater farming stuff on Fossil Island. But
okay, and so this brings nicely to the other point that I was going to make about exploration. I think that exploration as a pillar of skill design is a bad idea, because if you look,
my inner archaeologist is closing. I'm not listening.
Oh, listen to him. Listen to him. You have to listen to him.
Yeah, maybe you have a different perspective, and maybe you can enlighten me after I say my point. And you might find that we agree on more than you think. So, if you look at existing parts of the game, there are existing parts of the game that are beautifully designed and fun to explore exactly once. And what Shane was saying, the underwater area in Fossil Island is an example of one of those. It's a very large place. It's beautiful to explore. There's even like a Pearl mini game thing that you can do down there. And there's drift net fishing, which some people do. But for the most part, the only reason people ever go there is to do their seaweed farming, if they're like an Iron Man and they're trying to get their glass blowing materials and stuff like that. nobody does it. Why does nobody do it? Well, it's not because it's not a beautiful and interesting place to explore. It's because there's not content there that meaningfully progresses their account. If there was a reward from the Pearl minigame that people really wanted, then a lot more people would be doing it. The people who do drift net fishing are doing it because it lets them do, like we were just saying, it lets you get less XP in an individual skill, but more XP overall, and it's worth doing. You want to train your hunter and your fishing? That's a great place to do it. And people go there for seaweed because they need seaweed to do their crafting. Like, they're progressing their account. The exploration is fun exactly once. Shazian is another.
I agree. Like, I compared, like I was saying, archaeology, right, around exploration, and like,
sure,
you're not excavating at a particular dig site because that's the most beautiful dig site. Like, it's really, I think it's really fun to unlock new dig sites, unlock new material about the dig site, and sailing could do that, right? Like, you could go farther away, you could unlock new islands. But you're right, it's a one-off thing, right? Like, you unlock like a little bit of lore and a new environment, and that's it. And maybe you spend time in an environment if the skill supports it and offers it.
So that's an interesting point.
I think the one place sailing does make sense in that regard is the Eastern Lands, though.
Yeah. The Eastern Lands we haven't seen yet. All we know is that that's where cyclopees come from.
Yeah.
So you make an interesting point. I don't know a lot about archaeology, so I can't really speak from perspective. And I know that it's a well-loved skill among the RS3 community, and I imagine that a lot of that is because it helps unveil lore about the story in the game, right?
It's very well integrated, right? Like the progression of the skill is also the progression of how much information you unlock. And I could see sailing doing something similar, right? Like, as you progress further into the skill, like, your skilling progression is tied to your ability to uncover and explore more of the world, which that's like, in game design terms, it's a good thing because you're marrying narrative components with mechanical components.
Sure, I can kind of get behind that idea. It makes sense, but I guess my question would be, like, does it make sense for all of that to happen at sea?
Right, and that was my question too.
The sea, I think, gets old really quickly. Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's a big blue wet thing. You can only put so much interesting stuff out there. Although, with your point talking about the merits of something like archaeology, in the initial poll when they were talking about doing a new skill, one of the examples they gave as a potential idea for what a new skill might look like was a skill called exploration. And the idea behind that, as I recall, at least my perspective of it when I was reading about it, was that it kind of was a skill where you go about your normal day-to-day doing whatever you're doing, skilling or PVM or whatever, and you just encounter these little nuggets of lore, these little nuggets of information, and tells you something about the area or whatever. Little things that you just kind of happen upon, and they give you some interesting information, you get some XP, whatever, right? And I think a lot of people liked the idea of that because it's something that doesn't intrude on the existing game. It doesn't change any major metas. It just lets you do what you're already doing, but also makes it a richer experience. You're gaining XP along the way. You don't have to go out of your way to do it. And you're getting a perspective on the lore of the world, and that's really cool. And so I think a lot of people looked at that idea and thought that's really cool. And so on all of the questions that had to do with whether people liked the idea of exploration, a lot of people were like, yeah, that skill looks good. But then they ended up not doing the skill like that because they said the same argument that I just made. What's probably going to end up being the meta? People want to train this. They're just going to run around a place like Lumbridge and try and find all of the things and then move to the next place, and they're going to grind it out in whatever way.
Yeah.
And it's going to end up being a boring thing where you're not actually exploring. You're kind of just running around doing the thing.
So it's the logical extension of that then that you avoid that by doing it at sea.
Yeah. Well, so I think that the perspective on sailing is that exploration is a part of it, but they made a good point, and I think this is good design, is making it so that the skill is you train it by using it. You get the bulk of your XP from sailing. But then we have this other problem. It's like, why do you want to sail? This gives you a way in game to do what charter ships already do, but slower. So,
and I'm just sitting here wondering.
That, and like they have like the little Barracuda mini game thing, which will be a cool like high intensity way to train. But yeah, like they've got all these different ideas for training methods, and what does the gameplay look like is sort of what we were just discussing compared to what they were proposing exploration would probably devolve into. But do we really want to do this at the ocean? I don't know that I do.
And I think this just encompasses the core concern that, you know, most people, well, not most people, but the bulk of people who have concerns with sailing have. And I feel like we've been very constructive in all our coverage on the show, and even today on this with sailing. And it's just like, I don't necessarily know where we go from here, and maybe, you know, just the more traditional way of leaning into rewards and what have you is the way to go, like they do in quests, for example, on that. And we also did get some news this week about the While Guthix Sleeps rewards that are coming out with that. And what camp were you in on that? Did you want the claws to stay with the raid, or did you want them to move over to the tormented demons?
On that particular topic, I think I was relatively indifferent, because for me, the Dragon Claws as a reward from Cox, even though they've been in the game for so long, have been something that's just been out of my budget. And even though I have the money, I could buy them, I don't really know why I want them. They're just like damage, and usually I'd rather have my spec be used for, instead of burst damage, something like Dragon Warhammer for reducing their defense to help with my damage overall. So there's not a lot of places where I want just a bunch of burst damage. This isn't like it was way back in the day. I think probably one of the big things holding their price up is not their usefulness, but their rarity.
Yeah, and where they come from on that. I'd agree with you on that. But
so,
we got compelling items that are potentially coming from the tormented demons and the rewards after While Guthix Sleeps. Which one of these would you like to jump in on first? The magic one, the ranged one, or the melee one?
So,
or the claws.
I was going to say, well, as I mentioned, the claws are something I was relatively indifferent on, and I've heard some people talking about these claws as, or they've been commenting on saying that other people have been complaining that they should be new best in slot or whatever, but I don't. I think that they look fine. I think that there's room for a spec weapon that's a damage option somewhere between Dragon Claws and DDS. And the Abyssal Dagger and whatever.
I agree.
I think they looks like they have a good spot, and they have this nice balancing mechanic where they're not burst damage, but they do get you a lot of damage if you hit it at the top of the kill, and it's a longer kill. That damage, the burn effect lasts for 10 ticks, or not 10 ticks, 40 ticks, so 10 attacks. So if you're fighting something for a long time, you're going to get your money's worth for that.
That is nice. I do like those kind of dot things like that. In combat.
So it seems like that seems good. The fire looks pretty cool. It's of the options, it's the one that seems the most straightforward in terms of what it's balanced around, because the Arclight already is best in slot at basically every demon.
Mm-hmm.
The only limiting factor on it, and this is a big limiting factor, is the fact that it picks charges, and you have to get those crystal things from the Catacombs of Korend. So that is a big limiting factor. And so the fact that once you get this upgrade, you no longer need those, that is a big deal. It doesn't even matter that the upgrade is pretty small. And honestly, when I was looking at it initially and they said, hey, one of these is going to be a strict upgrade to Arclight, I'm like, really? We need another upgrade to what is already the best weapon for its niche? But fortunately, when I looked over it, the upgrades were relatively marginal. It's some accuracy, and the spec reduces defense by a little more, which means that it no longer is competing with things like Dragon Warhammer as hard. So it looks like it's going to be in a really good spot to me.
And I like how it is a thematic fit to the Tormented Demons as well.
And that's the thing you notice with all these too, is that they're thematic on that. And, maybe we're not going to be missing the Dragon Claws as one would have expected on Tormented Demons with that.
Yeah, I think people are going to want to do them in no small part because they made this mechanic where I think they're either untradeable drops or the synapses that you use to make these weapons.
The synapses are tradable, but you have to make them yourself, which I love, by the way. That's to me, that's like Iron Man Light. You don't have to do the grind, but you do have to get the levels.
Yeah.
And I love that. It's the perfect balance to me.
Absolutely. I love that too. I loved Jadinko farming in RS2 back when all the rewards were untradeable for that reason.
Okay.
I really liked it for that reason. And so I am usually in favor of cool new upgrades that you have to actually work for. You can't just buy them because you have a billion monies or whatever.
And I think the players kind of like that too, the ability to, make their own items. And, you can have spots where you just get something dropped to you.
And you want to have goals to work towards. You want to have a reason to play the content. And so that is a good way to give you a reason to want to do the content because you want to unlock the thing. I will talk a little bit about the other two weapons.
Yeah, go for it.
So for the bow and the staff both, my question was, okay, what are they being compared to? Because the Firelight is obviously just a direct upgrade from the Arclight.
Yep.
You know where that's trying to be balanced around. The other two, it's like, okay, where do they fit? And so I was trying to look at some comparable weapons, and I think that the bow is worse than the bow of Ferdinand. The Bofa everywhere except for demons, which is probably exactly where you want it to be as a weapon. And the staff, I'm not sure. I mean, staff is kind of just like any other staff, but it gives the Demon Bane spells a use. Because otherwise they're
do we like the fact it can auto-cast Arceus spells?
Yes, because that's where Demon Bane spells are.
Okay. I have not had the opportunity yet to dabble into the Arceus spell book because the quest that unlocks that fully is still on our to-do list, which we have the requirements for. We should do at some point.
It's definitely worth it. For me, Arceus spellbook while I was doing Slayer was my favorite spellbook because I could reanimate dead. A lot of people don't know this, actually. You can reanimate the dead where you killed them.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to the altar. If you're on the spellbook, you can do it wherever you are. But then Death Charge is also a lot of fun, especially if you have a cool spec weapon like SGS. You can just stay forever at Slayer task. And the offering spells just make prayer way faster. Prayer is one of the slowest skills if you train it naturally, but with those it easily keeps up with other combat skills in my experience.
Nice. Yeah, I think the Arceus book is really good. I think the spell book doesn't get enough love typically. But
no, it doesn't.
The Demon Bane spells are, I guess that they just never the thing that holds them back, I think, the most is probably there's not a lot of demons where magic is really what you want to use. Probably because things like the Arclight are just so good.
That's a good point.
Or even just other melee weapons. There's just other better options. Places where you really might want to have a really strong benefit against demons is against bosses, but even the bosses tend to have either high magic defense or high magic level that makes it so that even the big accuracy bonuses that you get with using those spells aren't really enough to press that challenge. So
these items might fill that niche then, right?
Right,
because they push the other styles. Maybe not side by side with Arclight, but at least closer to it. So
yeah, one of my initial thoughts with the staff is if it kind of feels like it's in a situation where the Demon Bane spells on their own are not good enough, so we're going to make this staff that makes them good enough. But then the spells are only good enough if you also have the staff.
Right.
Which feels kind of weird, but at the same time, I guess the alternative to that is make the staff do something else and then just buff the spells, but then you maybe end up in a situation where maybe the spells are too good on their own. I don't know.
I like the way the special attack is framed in that if you kill the demon, you get 25% special attack energy back with that.
Well, so it costs 20. This is a really interesting thing. So I was looking at the specs for that and the ranged weapon, which I'd like to come back to. The magic weapon, the special attack, like you were saying, it costs 25%. But if you kill the thing with the attack, you get that 25% back. It's like, okay, so that's cool. So you can get a full refund on this special attack. What does it do?
Yeah.
What is the benefit of it? The benefit of it is that the attack delay, which normally spells are on a 5-tick attack delay, is reduced by 3 for your next attack. But this becomes really awkward because you just killed the thing. So it's only going to help you if you then immediately attack another demon.
Right.
So this is really good if you want to just massacre a ton of imps. But I don't know what other niche it has. It's not really useful at any bosses because they have like a cooldown after you kill them before they're even there. Maybe it's good at Krill because you can then attack the minions.
From what I understand, it removes delay in your next attack. Like, I don't know what the cooldown on that is, but like instead of like you can make your next attack really quickly, I read it as you can make the next 2 attacks really close to each other because the delay between those 2 is reduced by 3.
The next 2 attacks that you do?
Yeah, so like the current the special attack, the attack delay remains 5, right? Okay. But then when you then tag like the next demon and you hit it with the staff, then you get the delay reduced. So you get your first 2 hits with only 2 ticks between.
Got it.
That's how I read it. So you get like a head start on killing the next demon.
Right. So you get a little bit of a damage boost on the next demon attack. Yeah. Huh. I'm going to go back and read it, see if I can parse that out. Because when I read it, it just seemed like you get this benefit. That's only helpful if you then immediately attack another demon.
Yeah, I can see how you would read it, but like it says the delay on your next attack, and I've now interpreted that as the delay after your next attack.
Okay, interesting. Yeah,
so that's after you kill it and then move on to the next one, that delay is lowered.
So, like you were saying, there might be some sort of cooldown on it, just like how Vengeance or whatever.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Like the next thing that you attack after that attack, it's reduced, so you get 2 attacks.
Your first 2 hits are going to be like basically like boom, boom. Yeah.
Now that actually makes it seem usable. Otherwise, I'm just like, this has a very weird.
No.
Yeah, I'm just like,
exactly.
This is a very
Otherwise,
weird niche. What does it do? Yeah. I want to kill imps at a 2-tick speed, but
I mean, you could if you want to, but I don't know if that's needed.
If you want to do imp catcher, here's what you got to do. You got to go to tormented demons and get this drop. Okay. Like, you starting to see the problem here? I didn't, but I think that makes sense. If that is how it actually works, where it's something like Vengeance, where it makes it so your next attack gets that benefit after it, then yeah, that actually makes sense.
All right. What about the ranged weapon? You said you wanted to focus on that one.
Well, so the special attack is interesting. It's a root or a bind effect, and it lasts longer when you use it against demons. But the problem with this is I looked through all the demons in the game, and there's only one where this might be relevant, and that would be Krill, the Samarakian general in God Wars Dungeon.
Oh, is it the rest aren't bindable, or?
No, like, so either it's like a Slayer monster that you can either just safe spot or whatever, where binding isn't relevant.
Right.
Or it's a boss like the Duke that doesn't move, and so binding him doesn't matter. Or it's a boss where, for whatever reason, binding them doesn't matter because they don't follow you anyway or something.
But you also get the burn.
Yeah. What is the burn?
So
it deals extra damage, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, extra damage is nice, and that's sort of expected on most special attacks. But I feel like if I'm wanting to use a ranged weapon against a demon, particularly against a boss, I don't think I want to use this special attack unless it's specifically against Krill. So as a special attack on a Demon Bane weapon, it feels out of place. I think it's a cool effect. I just don't know why it's on this weapon. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And you know, to me, honestly, I feel like the bow here is perhaps the weakest one out of the three.
Sure.
You guys agree with that? If they go in as is?
In terms of the design, probably.
Yeah.
I think in terms of its impact and usefulness, I think sure. I mean, if you want to use ranged against demons, this is the way to go.
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it with interest because it might be a replacement for my imbued magic shortbow.
Okay.
Right now you have like the toxic blowpipe, but that's expensive in maintenance, right? I just want to shoot arrows.
This is also a comp bow, FYI.
Okay. Interesting.
That's why I said I think this is the weakest of the three.
So what is? Maybe I'm missing something. What is it about it being a comp bow that
they attack slower?
Things? Oh, that it's a 4-tick speed.
Yeah.
Well, 4-tick speed is kind of standard for most weapons. I realize that short bow is different, but the thing that makes it okay is it has that 40 range strength as a base.
True.
Which then gets added to your arrows.
True.
So that's why when you combine the damage bonus on the arrows, let's say you're using rune or amethyst arrows, which are relatively reasonable to use on a budget. It's going to be worse than a Bofa, which is one of the best range weapons in the game, except against demons where it's better.
Yeah. But these items don't have to be best in slot. That's the thing, right? Like I could see
they need
myself.
to be best in slot at demons, I think.
Yeah, and they are.
Right, and I think they.
And that accomplishes that niche when you put a big demon overarching this entire thing.
Right,
like
exactly.
Like for the scorching bow, it is something I could see myself buying as a step up towards Bofa or T-bow once, like 10 years from now, maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
But and then when I do get the Bofa, I might keep this, right? That is one of these items. Like I might keep it.
I'm actually curious though, given what I was saying about it being a little worse than the Bofa, but better against demons, how it actually compares to other weapons at that level 75 tier, like the low pipe. I haven't run the numbers on it, but I'm really curious because I know that they've made this mistake in the past when they added weapons. They're like, we wanted to fill this particular niche, but it ends up in some way overshadowing existing weapons that are at that same tier.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to overshadow the blowpipe, though.
That's true. I mean, that was a tyrant for years, and even the nerfs on it didn't bring it to its original design intent, but more or less kept it really good, except gave it a little bit of a niche against low defense targets. But
yeah,
Sirion knows all about the blowpipe from his Jad adventures, don't you?
Yep, that was my. I gated myself behind the blowpipe for doing fight case. And I'm glad I did.
So you waited till you got a blowpipe to use it?
Yeah.
To do the fight case? Have you got the blowpipe? Have you done the fight case?
Yeah, I've done it. I've got a fire cape.
Okay. I see. I thought when you were saying that you were using your MSB that
I still use my MSB basically in most places.
On a budget because it doesn't have the maintenance.
Yeah. Though,
that's
to be
fair.
honest, like, I probably could. Like, it's not actually that. I think it's like, 200k per hour? It's not that bad.
Yeah.
It's the same. I now have a Trident of the Seas, and I looked at it, it's like, 250k per hour. That's fine, to be honest. Yeah. Like, considering how much faster you can kill things.
And that's a single herb run.
Right. And it depends on, like, what you're killing and stuff, too, and how much income you've got. Like if you're killing bosses and stuff, then you're hopefully recovering those costs with the drops.
Look,
but if you're doing Slayer, maybe not.
Exactly. Like I'm currently point boosting Slayer with doing Turtle task. I'm not gonna toxic blowpipe giant bats. I mean,
Bofa is plenty good, or not Bofa, but MSB is plenty good enough for that.
Exactly.
Yeah, MSB is I think it's kind of funny. I noticed when I started running the numbers on some of the stuff during one of the leagues. is I realized that like way back in the RS2 days, before EOC and whatever, everyone was using like crossbows because they had the highest accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody realized that like knives are generally better everywhere.
No, like I have like a rune crossbow, right, in my account, and I think I've used it maybe once because I needed to wear like a dragonfire shield or anti-dragon shield.
It's good when you need a shield. It's good whenever you have enchanted bolts that it synergizes with. But you can use knives with a shield. I've used knives against basilisk knights.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true.
And I mean, hey, at the end of the day, it's about the story, about whatever works for you. And I think...
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I think that's a good way of encapsulating everything that we got here, from the, the While Guthix Sleeps rewards to sailing and, even Project Rebalance, is that RuneScape is such an individualistic game in terms of how you approach it. Yes, you play it with other players, but everybody's path is just so different and so unique at the end of the day.
And the horizontal design philosophy of the old school team, not just making
which
bigger
is wonderful,
and better, but building niches and letting people find the stuff that is cool for them. That really helps with that.
Yeah. 100% agree on that. But that pretty much almost brings us to the end of the program here. So, Dan, is there anything you'd like to say before we say goodbye for another week?
Oh man, thanks a lot for having me on the show. If anyone else is interested in having more discussions about this, I'm active on the ClanQuest Discord, for those of you who are in ClanQuest. Otherwise, I'm also in the B&B Discord as well.
Yeah.
If you want to hash out some more of these ideas.
Yeah, I'll give a plug to the ClanQuest one, because we don't talk about ClanQuest enough on this show. If you're interested in a clan and you like questing, it's the place to be. And hey, I mean, even if you don't quest all the time, or maybe you're just warm on quest, ClanQuest still a great place to be. Guest in the clan chat to get started, or join the Discord over at discord.clanquest.org. But thanks so much, Dan, for being here. If you guys want full show notes for this episode, update.show/OS. We also have the Friends chat, which is at BitsBytes. And, of course, you can subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast listening service by just clicking on the icons on the episode over at update.show/OS. But, Sirian, anything else from you this week, or are we good? Good?
No, let's fast forward to next week, where we get to talk about the combat Project Rebalance.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one, I bet. But we'll see you guys next week for that one. But until then, have a good week, everybody. See you then. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.